a lot of our song titles or lyrics actually wind up having parallel meanings. Maybe when I'm writing the words at the time, they're not as present in my mind as just being in that moment and trying to create for the music that he's coming up with. But after everything comes out and then everything's on the album and I get to look back or hear back after everything's done, even years later sometimes, it winds up having different connotations or parallel meanings. So, but all our yesterdays winds up reminding me of basically what the idea of the album and the band has been about for all these years of us being together anyway.
Very true. It's a look back at our past and the past beyond that.
Right. I mean, the taste of the Renaissance, the taste of medieval times, as well as our past, but also the past times that have gone before, and taking little tastes and flavors of those and working them into
That's right. That's really
today.
well said.
That's going to be a good one to do in concert live. I think everybody's going to get involved with that one
Right.
for sure.
That one's based around, again, like we've done in the past, it's a tavern type of feel where everybody gets involved. The hey, hey, hey parts. I'll often say to Candy, write something that doesn't tax the audience too much. So I think they can remember to go, hey, 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 and not have to remember all the lyrics. Right?
I like when you said that to take the tempos of some of the songs when we're trying to work on tempos of the songs. If you could swing the beer mug to it, that's how you know that that's the right tempo to it. But it really does. It's a camaraderie between us and the audience. It gets everybody involved, and it winds up being a show where there's this incredible, almost like a friendship between us and the audience. There's no walls, there's no barriers. It's completely broken down, and we're all there, just enjoying ourselves on the same path and on the same journey, and just having a great time for that evening, for the night that we're in whatever area we're in. So it's great. On a long road, miles to go. It's winding, it's cold, and it's covered with snow. But I ask you what we all want to know. Where are we going from here?
That's how it was originally written. And then now
and even when you recommended to do that, I could not imagine what that was going to sound like when you were like, we're going to do it this way, double time, upbeat. I'm like, that song's not going to work like that. And sure enough, lines on my face, lines on my hands, lead to a future I don't understand. Some things don't go as they're planned. Where are we going from here?
Most rock and roll music that's melodic comes from the old days anyway. Whenever I was playing with Rainbow or Purple, I would always incorporate the melodic factor from the 1600s. But it was disguised in those days, just playing through loud amplifiers. But it was always there, that melodic content. And those scales, those intervals, their scales are used in those days. The majors and minors were very similar to how rock music is written. I'm kind of obsessed with 1500s music, and it's, like I said, all those scales, and that it really comes from those days.
It's a good question, though, because we've actually gone back to the 1200s.
That we have.
With King Alphonse.
We've slipped.
We've done some Tchaikovsky stuff.
Yeah.
And Balkan folk music, so we kind of are all over the place.
Of course, but it's all old. It's all been done. Not the way we're doing it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, we're trying to kind of pioneer a certain way, which is tricky, because sometimes when you're in the studio, you don't quite know where to go with it, whether to overproduce it and bring in the electric guitars, or to bring in the hurdy-gurdy. And that's always a kind of a dilemma sometimes, isn't it?
But there's something amazing about rediscovering old melodies that have been around for hundreds of years, and just kind of dusting them off and shining them up, brightening them a little bit, adding new lyrics and new instrumentation, and still keeping the spirits or the ghosts of the past within that music, but also allowing other people to enjoy it as a completely fresh new song. So it's kind of rewarding to, like, when people say that they enjoy our music, it's like, oh, did you know that was hundreds of years old? Did you know that was a 1200s melody? And to see the look on their face sometimes, and they go and rediscover other songs too, and it's almost like an educational experience, but in a fun way. I guess.
That's right. Well, that particular song was written in Wales by a German in Germany. Our friends, the guys from Germany, medieval band. I heard them doing it and took the idea, and we did a little bit more to it. But the title of it is interesting title. It really means, I think, out there in Welsh. Welsh is in my family anyway. I was born in West Supermare, and Bristol was my mother, brother. And in Wales was my father, grandfather, and what have you. So it's nice to be able to do something and put it in their language. I haven't yet learned how to say that particular title in Welsh, because Welsh is a very difficult language. But we need someone who's Welsh to actually say it.
How are we going to introduce that on stage?
We'll just go, and
Hold up a sign?
This one is a new one.
In Welsh.
In Welsh,
Yes.
right.
Darker Shade of Black. I had that riff around for quite a few years, as many of my ideas are around for a long time. And it's like what's called a canon in music. It just keeps repeating the same progression. And it was building like an anthem. And I wanted someone, singing it with a kind of an operatic kind of texture. It's almost based a little bit on Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. That's in there, that really melancholy kind of chords, It's all and that repeats itself. It was an idea I had, and I played it to my producer, Pat Reagan. And I think Candy was in Aruba at the time, sunning herself and with the kids. And I thought, well, rather than to do nothing, I do have a chord progression. What do you think of this?
Is that why the song is so melancholy? Because I
Could
was in
be.
Aruba?
Exactly. And I played it to him, and he said, wow, that's great, let's do it. And I was like, oh. He gave me that kind of input, because I thought he'll just say, well, it's just a chord progression, but I had that,
He's been playing that around the house forever,
yeah.
for years.
But it was loosely based around Beethoven's kind of feeling, not one of his tunes or melodies. It was just a feeling of Beethoven, very melancholy. And I called it a darker shade of black because of the whiter shade of pale. We thought that the organ sounded like Whiter Shade of Pale, which is an old musician I used to play with, Matthew Fisher. And Pat Reagan, the keyboard player, was playing, and I thought it would be funny to call it a darker shade of black, as it's so reminiscent of Whiter Shade of Pale, the tone of the organ, not the melody. It has a bit of Mozart in the middle, where it goes to a kind of classical thing.
I got goosebumps when I heard it.
Yeah.
Long time. Was
It's been
originally
a long time, yeah.
recorded by Linda Ronstadt.
Yep.
And I'm trying to remember how we actually rediscovered that, but we were doing it at our acoustic gatherings for a long time.
Yeah. We often try out our tunes when we play with our friends and we have a gathering of all musicians. And we just threw it in. Went down very well, so we thought, maybe we should record that.
Yeah, the songs I can just close my
Yeah.
eyes and really visualize and kind of
Yeah.
disappear into, escape into. And
Yeah.
that's definitely one of them. Whether they're our songs or somebody else's songs, I mean, it's that kind of vibe. It's very different, yeah. But I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, great song. Brilliant song.
Moonlight Shadow is actually a song that, believe it or not, when we first started doing this band in '97, and we did Shadow of the Moon, that was a play on Moonlight Shadow, even the title. So that's been inspirational for us since the beginning.
That's right. Very
Huge
true.
fan of Maggie Riley and Michael Oldfield. Her voice is still incredible.
They did that back in 1985, I think it was. They had a big hit in Europe.
Maybe a different version. The last that ever she saw him, carried away by a moonlight shadow, she passed on worried and mourning, carried away by a moonlight shadow, lost in a riddle that said come to talk to me this night. She couldn't find how to push through.
And it goes into a rhythm.
The trees that whisper in the evening, carried away by a moonlight shadow, singing songs of sorrow and grieving. Carried away by a moonlight shadow, all she saw was the silhouette of a gun, far away on the other side. He was shot 6 times by a man on the run, and she couldn't find how to push through. We played that like how many different ways, Moonlight Shadow? Fast and slow, and
We do.
in waltz time.
We do play it. Every time we do
loud
it,
and
we play it a
quiet.
different way.
Yeah.
I got you, babe.
I got you.
Tell us
babe.
about it.
That's another one. I'm telling you, we get so much inspiration from our acoustic nights. We just sit there with a group of friends. We take over the whole back of a restaurant, a very woody, dark restaurant that's haunted, right?
Mm-hmm.
They shut all the lights off for us. They close the place down. And we've been going there since we moved to our area, like 25 years ago. And we get all of our friends to sit around, usually come dressed in Renaissance garb. Everybody brings their acoustic instruments. And we just pass the guitars around. We do it once a
We
week.
catch all sorts of diseases.
Speak
So
for
that's
yourself on that one, really. But it's great because everybody brings something to the table, you know, and all different walks of life, all different kinds of, I mean, we have all of our doctor friends
Yeah.
that come down. Like, there's just all these different people that come to the tables, and they just all want to be involved with music for that night. So they're bringing violins, they're bringing acoustic guitars, they're bringing, you know, all their lyrics, and they revisit all of these songs from years ago. And we go, oh yeah, I remember that one, and we all get involved with singing, and again, that camaraderie, you know, that friendship, that just like everybody's one for that moment, and it's just such a great feeling, right? And so that's how we rediscover a lot of these songs.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's my cue. Is that my cue?
Yeah.
A subtle cue. They say we're young and we don't know. We won't find out until we grow. Well, I don't know if all that's true, but you got me, and baby, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. You know you have to take the sunny part, right?
Hey, what is it? Hey?
They say our love.
I've learned to say hey.
Come on. That's all we got. Whistle solo. I'll take anything there.
Yeah.
We went through a list of names as to who we could use to do that duet, right?
That's right.
Different
yeah.
male vocals
Yeah.
to take the male part, obviously. And then we said, you know what? We could actually just sing it from one perspective. It doesn't really have to be a, you know, back and forth.
Yeah, we
thing.
were concerned with that.
Yeah.
that we didn't
There's a lot
have.
of names that came up. But I think our keyboard player is probably going to take the Sonny Bono part.
I think so, with suspender belts
stage.
on.
Well, I sent him a link that, you know, for the
Actually, he could be Cher.
the bowl cut and the big mustache. So yeah,
He could be Cher.
we could do it that way. That would be great. The Other Side, I believe, is a Czech song originally. Do you remember it?
Doodle-diddle-dee-doo-doo. That one?
No,
Yeah.
is that just original from you?
That's original.
Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my mistake.
Yeah. We actually forgot about that track. We were listening back
I
to some of the
remembered it.
songs that we've done, and we heard that one, and we thought, I don't even remember recording it.
I love that song.
Perhaps it's somebody else's song completely.
No.
Maybe it's another band playing.
Well, I know I wrote the lyrics, so I can definitely.
Right.
let you know
And
about that.
it's about the other side.
Yeah, it's a total supernatural
Yeah.
story behind that. There's actually well, you know, there was a year there where we lost a lot of people very close to us. It was also the year John Lord went, which we found out about 5 minutes before we went on stage, right? It was
Mhm.
very difficult. Owen Fife went in that same year. One of my best friends lost her husband that same year, and
Yeah.
so it was very difficult. But there was like a string of people. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And the more we experienced those losses, and the more I spoke to the people who were left behind or left with the memories, the more symbolism started coming out about how, although it was a horrible grieving situation, but symbolically, they were actually sent a lot of signs that were very interesting, that showed that the people had crossed, that the people were okay, and making sure that they knew that. And so those signs that came through, it's actually, that's what a lot of the message is, symbolism within the song is
The other side.
exactly those stories.
When my mother passed away, I was in a hotel and the phone rang and then it stopped. I went down to the receptionist and said, in a very small hotel, and I said, what was that phone call that came through? And she said, there was no phone call that came through. It would have gone through me.
Right.
I'm the only person here.
There's always messages from
But
the other side.
You know, the telephone rang a couple of times, and my mother would always tell me if I was going from A to B to call her, you know, with one ring of the phone, that meant I'd reached my destination.
It's incredible. One of my best friends who lost her husband that same time period, she said a couple of weeks later, the husband's cell phone went off in his jacket pocket, I guess, and it was one of those reminders in the cell phone, and it turned out that was the night of the full moon, and the reminder was for him to take the family and go out and look at the blue moon. And I said, you know what? You were meant to get that. I get goosebumps when I talk about that. But really, like, if that wasn't a message telling you, go outside, look up, it's okay. You know, I'm still here. It's okay. And every time you look at the moon, think of me. And that's really what kind of was the springboard for the idea, and the main inspiration was that situation. Right. But then again, as we speak to more people, you always find out there's messages that come through from the other side.
And my auntie, when the uncle died, this butterfly landed right on her head and stayed there.
Yeah,
and she knew that was a sign.
There's a way for them to tell us it's all right. It's
butterflies, bells, electrical things are channelings. Yeah. Queen's Lament was played on the mandola, and I wanted it to be really pretty miserable because it was written basically about Queen Eleanor from Aquitaine when her son was Richard the Lionheart. Richard the Lionheart was in a castle in Germany, and his brother was looking for him. And apparently he was outside this one castle playing. He was a minstrel. And Richard the Lionheart recognized the melody. And so his brother knew which castle he was in because he gave him a sign that he was in that particular tower of the castle. So it's really about the mother, the anguish that she would have gone through of having a son locked up in France and what have you. So, but there are many, I also thought of Queen like Lady Jane Grey, and so in the end I didn't want to name the Queen, but it's about a few queens. There's one of Henry VIII's wives that gave him the only son, which was Edward, you know, who died when he was 10. So there's a lot of, and she died at childbirth. So there's a lot of pain that goes into being a queen. So it was about all of them, really. And when you listen to it, it's got I like to give it that particular sound from the mandola, which sounds like a lute, and the intervals and the chord progressions are very similar to what they would have played back in those days. Very minimal, you know. It's very rigid the way it was played. You can't just fly around. You have to play the set melody very sternly. You know. That was the idea, to instill that melancholy kind of feel again.
He's very good at being melancholy.
I'm very good at being miserable now.
Yeah. That should be your profession.
That's right.
It's an art form. Really.
Misery is a very strong feeling. You know, it's a very real feeling, and people try to avoid it. They should embrace it, and then you'll get over it.
It's a lot harder to write songs when you're happy.
It is.
Don't you think? There's so much depth and dimension to
You could always play
depression, to depressing things.
Bully Bully.
Right, I guess.
I think that was a happy song, wasn't it?
I'm still not sure what it was about, but
You could always put it into a minor.
having two children now at this point, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, we watch a lot of Disney movies, right? And we were watching Brave, and and Merida gets led through the forest by the stone circles, gets thrown off her horse, and she's following the will-o'-the-wisps, which lead her to a witch's cottage. So like this, it's funny where you wind up getting inspiration from. Somebody once said, you know, where do you get inspiration from? I'm like, where don't you get it from? Like, you can get it from anywhere you look, right? Yeah, you can. I mean, nature, love lost, love found. But this happened to be this this story, or that portion of the story. The rest of it goes someplace else, but the visual on that was amazing. But kind of lyrically, it kind of is Celtic anyway, because Merida was a Scottish story.
Yeah.
What was that musically based on? Do you remember?
Music. Let me think. It was just a chord progression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has so many ideas at home. He has them on old-fashioned tape recorders with real tape, nothing digital, and just goes through them and pulls them out.
Yeah, we have lots of ideas on bits of tape, and whatever I pull out, then we work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a frame of mind at the time.
Yeah.
People say, well, what were you thinking? Well, my mind is pretty vacant most of the time. So I kind of just play. You know.
But it's funny with the path that you end up taking. You know, you evolve as a musician, you evolve as a human, you evolve as a wife or a husband or a parent, or you know, in any relationship that you wind up having, and things feel right at the time that didn't feel right prior to that. So even musically, we might have all of these ideas, but the marriage between the music and the words, it has to work. It has to have that energy where it connects so deeply together that it's right for that moment. It kind of glows at that moment, and that's what winds up on the albums, I think. Earth, Wind and Sky is a song that I wrote the music and the lyrics to, and it's a funny thing because originally, well, I have all of these ideas and musical ideas, and sometimes I present them to Ritchie for Blackmore's Night album, but he's such a prolific writer that a lot of times he doesn't need the musical ideas that I have. You know, he'll use me for the lyrical content, which is great, but he's so musically based, obviously. But so that one originally was going to wind up on Reflections. I have a few of them that kind of got pushed aside for Reflections. I worked on it a bit with Pat Regan at the time, and I wasn't happy with the direction it was going in, the sound of it. So when we started recording this album, I said, you know, I've kind of got this idea. It's a sound that we haven't really touched on before. It's almost Native American, like an Indian kind of drum, kind of percussive, but really so nature-based. And I'm always so in awe of the miracles and the beauty of nature. I mean, I know that people walk past things every day and don't see them or don't appreciate them, but the sunsets that we see, or the falling snow, and I know I've said it so many times, but I'm still like a child inside anytime I see that for the first time. It's always amazing, and always kind of replenishes me, you know, refreshes my whole system. So anyway, that's where the idea for Earth, Wind and Sky came from. And when I sat down with Ritchie didn't have anything to do with any of the songs off of Reflections. It was really important for me at that time to do it myself. And so when I brought this song to him, he had exactly the ideas that I wanted it to sound like. So when he started playing it on acoustic guitar, which I didn't have in Reflections, I said, that sounds so much better than the direction that we were going in prior to that a few years ago. And he did that amazing fingerstyle guitar sound, and then I added the percussion to it, and I still kind of rode Pat, no, take this out and put this in, and no, we need harp there, and until it was right, because that's kind of my baby, you know, my song on the album. And I'm really happy with the way it came out, actually. It's exactly how it sounded in my head, finally. You know, so now I can kind of present it to everybody.
Coming Home is, for me, you know, I visualize different things to sometimes what Candy does. That was more of a Joan of Arc thing, winning the war and coming home from all the wars throughout the years, being very happy, and that they're still alive, basically. So to me it was Joan of Arc on horseback coming home, and they just won the war. How did you see it?
It's still to date, though. I mean, we're still, you know, so proud of the people that fight on our behalf, that allow us to have the freedom that we have.
Exactly.
So
any war, you know, when the people have to fight.
It's horrible that they have to go through it.
Yeah. That one,
like
if anything, was, you know, I was slightly disappointed with that one. I couldn't get the energy onto record. It's okay, but I thought it would turn out better than it did. For instance, Will-O'-the-Wisp came out much better than I thought it would do. So it works, and you know, you get your highs and lows, but it's retaining that freshness. That can be difficult. when you're playing it all the time, going over it and adding things, then you're not quite sure what to take in and out and which way to go. But it can be very rewarding or very frustrating. But that kind of sums up my observation of this band in general. When it works, it really works great. But it can be very awkward sometimes because it's not your typical rock band where they can hide behind just turning your amplifier up and going through a few moves and running around the stage with the lights. You've actually got to say something because you're there basically in your underwear, and you've got to say something like, well, I can play as well as run around the stage with laser beams.
Well, I think we've learned kind of the hard way. What we used to do is go into the studio for a couple of months and do everything and then be done with it and have exactly that feeling. But we've since learned, years later, it's better to record some of the album, like parts of it, and then go on tour, get away from it. You know, just clear your mind, concentrate on what's right in front of you, the energy of connecting with the audience. Then book time again with Pat, have him fly back out. So we take it in piece now. So we're able to kind of revisit the songs that we recorded months prior, but we've had the escape from them. So we can hear it again with fresh ears, and we're able to say, oh, you know what, this is working or not, or we need to add this. And, but it's taken a while to figure that process out.
That's right.
How many songs of
How many of these songs will probably play 4 because we have such a broad repertoire already. I think we play for 3 days now on stage. It used to be 1 hour.
The hardest part is not which songs to put in. The hardest part is which songs do we take out that make room for it. Because a lot of places we play, the specialized venues have curfews. So trying to narrow down our shows is, people always say, whatever happened to this song? It's like, well, we had to take that out to put the new one in. And everybody has an opinion what they want to hear. But somebody once said, yeah, just stand on stage for 3 days and we'll be happy. Just play everything, you know. Yeah. But it's tricky. We switch it up. We switch it up all the time, every night. So. Yeah. There'll be a little taste of everything, I think. But definitely, probably 4 songs, I think, are going to be
I would say 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Because we do a lot of songs. We do about 50 songs on stage sometimes.